This video sponsor Displate are running another one of their massive annual sales. Their Collectiverse sale can get you up to 32% off when you buy 1 or 2 Displates and up to 37% off when you buy 3 or more. What are Displates, you ask? Well, they're essentially posters that are better, cooler, more convenient, and more durable than regular posters because they are made of metal. The most recent sale features a handy new Collectiverse tool that lets you dive into the world of gaming, movies, and anime with a click of a button, allowing you to quickly find something you'll love. And that shouldn't take too long because there are over 2 million original and licensed designs to choose from. Personally, I'm a big fan of the recently launched Destiny 2 collection featuring vistas from some of the game's most iconic raids. I've got them up on my wall right now and I love them. Displates are almost never discounted as much as they are in the month of September, so if you want to get up to 37% off when you purchase, then now is the time. Just click the link below and use offer code SKILLUP at checkout. Offer not valid on limited edition or Lumino products, but everything else is fair game. Just use offer code SKILLUP at checkout after clicking the link below. Thanks Displate for sponsoring the video.
So I've always liked the Borderlands games, especially Borderlands 2, sunk some good time into that one, but Borderlands 4, man, I don't just like this game, I love this game. Over the last week, every free hour I had, I spent playing Borderlands 4. Not in a long time have I so easily been able to play a game for like 12 plus hours straight and still feel just as excited to do it all over again the next day. Ended up putting in about 40 hours over 5 days and thought, okay, I should probably put the game down for a sec and start working on that review. This obsession kinda came as a surprise to me, since many pre-release reviews painted this as just more Borderlands, so I was expecting to enjoy it to the same degree that I enjoyed all the other Borderlands games. I can certainly see where that sentiment comes from. It's more Borderlands, in the sense that its distinct art style is of course retained here, only now improved with fancier detail and lighting. It's more Borderlands in the story, but thankfully not in the Borderlands 3 way. The writing is more in line with earlier entries, where the jokes only kick in at the right time and place. I think it is dialed in a touch too far and its characters aren't as developed as they could be, but that more balanced tone, alongside some sick encounters and environments, results in the most enjoyable campaign in the series, I think. It's also more Borderlands in that the game suffers from some of the same issues that all the previous games had. Performance at launch was atrocious, and while it's gotten better with recent patches, it's still not up to par. Similarly, the UI. It sucks, and in some ways it's actually worse than the previous games, despite Gearbox's efforts to try something different. However, as someone fortunate enough to play this game on a high-end PC and can look past the UI annoyances, I was enjoying Borderlands 4 a lot more than I expected, and it was for all the ways in which this is not just more Borderlands. The move from individual levels to a single open world is a natural transition for the Borderlands series. It makes you feel grounded in this universe and facilitates exploration in a way that almost no other looter shooter does. The additions to movement make the combat loop more agile and reactive than ever, to the point that it now feels on par with some of the best shooters on the market. And if you thought the loot and buildcraft in Borderlands couldn't get any more crazy, man, think again. So the things I already liked about Borderlands are retained here, but it's the meaningful additions layered on top of those things that really sold me. Borderlands is a franchise that's always stood out with its art and buildcraft, but when it comes to moment-to-moment gameplay, it's often struggled to keep pace with the rest of the looter genre. That's no longer the case here in Borderlands 4. Gearbox have really stepped up to the plate and delivered something that isn't just more of the same, but an evolution of the franchise that both meets and in many ways surpasses the competition.
I'm RJ. I'm a vault hunter with the Crimson Resistance.
Most people just look at Gazongas instead of listening to her Gazongas.
You are no longer a vault hunter. I have a new use for you.
The closer we get, the more I feel uncertain.
Borderlands 4 is set on the planet Kairos, a prison world once hidden from the rest of the universe until the sudden collision of a moon broke its cloaking shell. It's run by an all-powerful dictator known as the Timekeeper, who uses brain implants to survey and control the population. You, a vault hunter, find yourself on Kairos in search of a vault, only to be captured and imprisoned, since the chaos we sow is in direct opposition to the Timekeeper's perfect future. But luckily, a resistance group breaks you out of there, and you're then compelled to join their cause in liberating the people of Kairos. The story of Borderlands 4 is pretty decent. It's not amazing, but it is nicely paced in that each region has their own sub-story going on, that each follow a clean 3-act structure, and all the plot lines converge in a satisfying way. Your Vault Hunter also talks more and appears in cutscenes now, which makes them feel like more of an active participant in events. There's actually so much going on here that it can leave characters feeling a little underdeveloped or that their arcs feel a bit rushed, but overall, I enjoyed the story. It's a fun blockbuster adventure. Certainly helps that the tone feels much more balanced this time around. By now, you've likely heard that the writing is far less overbearingly comedic when compared to Borderlands 3, and I'm pleased to report that that is true. It's felt right away when you meet the Timekeeper in the intro, and it's immediate just how different he is to the Dragon King or the Calypso twins or Handsome Jack. He's even-tempered, he's calculated. Not once during the story does he crack a joke or quip or laugh maniacally. He's got this very quiet confidence about him, and I suspect that's in direct response to the criticisms made toward the writing of Borderlands 3. While that does give the Timekeeper an intimidating presence, him being so singular in his goals does also make him a little predictable. Like, part of what made Handsome Jack such a fun villain was just how utterly unhinged he was. You never really knew what he'd do next or what boundaries he'd cross. The Timekeeper falls a little flat by comparison, but I guess comparing any villain to Handsome Jack is a tall order. He does take more of a back seat though, as much of the story sees you taking on his 3 commanders, and they do exhibit the kind of deranged behavior you'd expect from a Borderlands villain. Even then though, your interactions aren't filled with overly quippy, profanity-spewing nonsense. The humor is meted out in such a way that it doesn't undercut the morbid or earnest moments. I'd say that's especially true in the side quests, which were honestly such a pleasant surprise for me. Maybe it's because the bar is so low, it's at the bottom of the Mariana Trench when it comes to side quests in looter shooters. But yeah, I found myself doing every side quest I came across just because they're well-written stories. Perhaps the best example is this one with Claptrap, a character who many perceive as the most annoying in the franchise. He had this quest where we're going around collecting items from his time on Pandora, all the while he's yapping on and on about his past adventures, about how nobody's ever liked him, and so after collecting all his stuff, we're kind of like, hey man, maybe it's time to move on and start anew. Yeah, he has the expected sarcastic response initially, but he comes around, we blow up his stuff in a little ceremony, and he says this.
Thanks, Rafa. You're a good friend. You're a good friend.
That's the end of the quest line. There's no punchline, just a nice introspective moment. Because yeah, Borderlands 4 doesn't care to make a joke out of everything. Again, that's not to say the humor isn't there though, it's just less overt here in Borderlands 4. Like in this quest line where I was helping a mob boss with his dealings, and throughout it, my character, Rafa, slowly develops an accent to really immerse himself in the job.
Hey, yo, boss. I don't see any way into this place. Son of a bitch! They've got guards on the goods. Got the crate of parts, but the damn thing's locked.
So yeah, writing across the board is great, I think. There's a nice balance of humor and nice quiet moments. Definitely more in line with Borderlands 1 and 2. However, without the regular presence of someone like Handsome Jack or Claptrap, it does kind of feel like there's something missing. There is some of that over-the-top crass humor, but it's quite sparse, which can often make Borderlands 4 feel like it's a little more Guardians of the Galaxy than it is Borderlands. I did find myself yearning for a little bit more of that signature Borderlands edge, particularly in the main story, but yeah, it is a small gripe. Overall, I'm glad we steered away from Borderlands 3's writing. What really sets this campaign experience apart, though, is the shift to a full open world, as opposed to the smaller, separate levels of previous entries. Some may lament that the previous mission structure allowed for more biome diversity, tighter arena design, and less padding. However, I was really into this open world. I think the trade-offs were worth it. Like, when I saw the reveal of Destiny 1, I was excited by the prospect of having a big, seamless alien world that I could cruise around with my friends and stumble into all manner of interesting side quests and dungeons along the way. Obviously, that's not really how things played out, and the Destiny franchise has only gotten more theme parky over time, and that's fine, but I've always yearned for a looter shooter that might deliver that exploration experience. Then along comes Borderlands 4, which has given me that very thing. It's got a decently sized, seamless world, brimming with faction shootouts, world boss events, hidden dungeons, and side quests. The final region also has a cool Metroidvania approach to it as well, where certain side quests will unlock new ways to explore it. It's not a groundbreaking open world, but it certainly offers a more dynamic exploration experience than any other Borderlands game. More than that, I think it fundamentally changes the way it feels to play Borderlands. Without individual levels that you're loading into from a menu, you're less narrowly focused on completing a specific objective. So you end up following your nose. On your way to your next main objective, you might chance upon an elaborate cave system that leads to a cool boss fight, or a side quest that's a scavenger hunt that leads to a mythical legendary vending machine. That's one of the biggest reasons I found myself losing so many hours in this game. Without being booted out to a central hub or a lobby, you can kind of just exist and lose yourself in the world in a way that almost no other looter shooter allows for, aside from maybe The Division. It was a necessary change, I think, given the level-based structure is feeling a bit dated now, but it's also a natural fit for this franchise. Prior games were already trying to get you to explore a bit, they had you driving around in vehicles, but it was all very hamstrung by the restricted level design. Here, it feels like Borderlands is finally unburdened by its dated structure, allowing you to spread your wings and better immerse yourself in the life of a Vault Hunter. So, addressing the elephant in the room, performance. First, I'll preface by saying that I think Borderlands 4 is a great looking video game. I've always really loved its distinctive, comic booky, cel-shaded look, and it looks better than ever here in Unreal Engine 5. Some may disagree, but I think it's a noticeable step up from Borderlands 3. The foliage is thicker, rocks and cliff faces are defined by actual geometry rather than drawn on textures, and the updated volumetric lighting gives spaces far more depth, especially internal spaces. Some of the set piece moments and environments in later parts of the game too are just especially incredible, like honestly rivaling some of the coolest areas in Destiny 2, I think. All that said, it does not look good enough to warrant how awfully it runs. While patches have rolled through over the last week to stabilize things, it's still nowhere near where it needs to be. On an RTX 4080 Super, my game averages about 70 to 80 FPS in open areas, often dipping down to 60 FPS and getting hit with the occasional stutter. That's at 1440p with DLSS set to balanced on very high settings, so not even maxed out, mind you. No matter what rig you're playing on, by the way, the cutscenes are locked to 30 FPS, and that feels particularly awful during the many first-person cutscenes. Thing is, even on the best gaming PC that money can buy, you still can't hold a steady frame rate. Digital Foundry has a great breakdown on this. We're on an RTX 5090 at max settings, 4K, DLSS set to performance. They were hovering at around 80 FPS and still getting hit with the same stutters that everyone else does. Performance on consoles looks to be even worse. Their breakdown showed the game struggling to hold a steady frame rate even on performance mode, and it suffers from memory leaks that make your frame rate even worse the longer you play, so that's fun. On console, it's also locked to a very narrow 75-ish FOV at the time of writing, though Gearbox have said that they're working on adding a slider. Crazy that Borderlands 4 shipped with a slider specifically for Claptrap's dialogue and not for FOV, but I digress. So yeah, performance is still a real issue across all hardware. It didn't drag down my experience really, since a minimum 60 FPS on a 60Hz monitor is smooth enough for me, but again, I'm playing on a pretty powerful rig. I imagine that those looking to play Borderlands 4 on even the recommended specs will still likely have to fiddle around a lot with settings and AI upscaling to get it running at a stable frame rate. So yeah, that sucks. Unfortunately, what also sucks is the UI. I mean, let's start with how it looks. I think it looks pretty lame. UI was never a strength of Borderlands games, but at least it had character. Now it's all charmless, full-screen menus akin to Destiny or any other live service game. I'm glad that after all these years, Gearbox have finally tried to make some significant changes to the UI, but I'm not a fan of the direction they went. What bugs me more, though, is just how dysfunctional it is. Like, it's somehow worse than any other Borderlands game. Why is a basic thing like currency hidden in an icon you need to hover over? Why are weapons sorted by manufacturer by default, when that's like the most useless way to categorize them? And why does my sorting reset to that every time I move to another menu? Why do shaders have no sorting at all? Why, when comparing a weapon on the ground to the one in my hand, does it only show basic stats and not the perks? And that's not even everything I've written down in my notes. The amount of weird stuff here is genuinely baffling. The UI isn't just lacking in its design, by the way, it's also slow and buggy. Sometimes it takes ages for looted or purchased items to appear in your inventory. When trying to mark items as junk in the backpack menu, sometimes it'll just mark the item 2 rows above instead.
It is disappointing to see Gearbox still having problems with optimization and UI, considering they've been working on this franchise for over a decade and a half. I do think patches will eventually iron out most of those issues though, and I look forward to the day that everyone can play this game in its best possible state, because the core of Borderlands, the looting and the shooting, is absolutely top notch in Borderlands 4.
So the writing is decent, exploration is great, but the most important thing about a Borderlands game is the power fantasy, and on that front, Borderlands 4 has cranked things up to 11. What's had the most profound impact on gameplay are the added movement tools. Borderlands 3 added a slide and clamber, which was nice, but on top of that, you've now also got a dash, a double jump, a jetpack glide, a ground slam, and a grapple hook, which sadly can only be used on specific grapple points, but it's still handy in a pinch. These new movement tools make Borderlands combat loop so much more agile and frenetic and just plain fun than it's ever been. Like, you're basically a Destiny hunter, warlock, and titan all rolled into one. It's awesome. You feel like such a badass when you're chaining all this together, and it completely elevates the power fantasy that Borderlands has always been known for. It's also allowed Gearbox to get a little more funky with enemy and encounter design, which too has felt dated for a while now. Many enemies, especially bosses, can fire out attacks that you'll need to jump over or dash to avoid, and the telegraphs for these are pretty damn fast to account for how mobile you are. There are scenarios that involve you having to lob caustic bombs to burn away armor, or use your grapple to pull things, or ground slam machinery to disable them. Gearbox could definitely push these ideas further, but it's a good start for a game that's historically only ever been about shooting things. Speaking of shooting things though, the gunplay in Borderlands 3 was already a big improvement over Borderlands 2, but it's even better here in 4, where punchy sound design and weighty animations make shooting psychos in the face feel more cathartic than ever. But what makes the gunplay even more interesting are the changes to the guns themselves. Borderlands guns have always been pretty wild. They roll with some wacky perk related to their manufacturer, combined with random stat boosts and attachments, resulting in near endless combinations. The coolest guns were often the legendaries though, hence why they dropped like candy in Borderlands 3, and that kind of stifled the loot chase and build variety. In Borderlands 4 though, legendaries are a lot more rare, and non-legendary loot is now just as interesting, sometimes more so. So in Borderlands 4, you don't just have one wacky perk, guns can now roll with parts from the other manufacturers, sometimes multiple, and that leads to some wild stuff. Like, take this assault rifle for example. It's a TDR gun, so it becomes a thrown explosive on reload, but it also has a magazine that charges up before firing at full auto, and it also deploys a shield when aiming down sights. So that's really cool. That's just like 3 really impactful perks, and that's just an example of a random non-legendary gun. An example that doesn't even really synergize with itself all that well, not to mention all the powerful secondary fire modes that these guns can roll with. Honestly, did not think Gearbox could make the loot any crazier, but somehow the Mad Lads have pulled it off. And that feeds into the build craft, which in Borderlands 4 is just out of control in the best possible way. The skill trees of each Vault Hunter are more expansive than ever, and you've now also got a healing stim slot and an ordnance slot that houses grenades, heavy weapons, and throwing knives. So yeah, a lot of extra levers for buildcraft here, and you can pull off things that are pretty nuts. Like, for most of my playthrough, I built around pure single target burst damage. My active ability were these shoulder mounted turrets that I augmented to give me infinite ammo on reactivation. There was a node that extended my ability duration on critical
critical hits, and a node in a different tree that boosted my fire rate during it. I had a health stim that traded healing for even more fire rate, and a shield that boosted fire rate and crit damage when broken. I combined all that with a revolver that could fan fire and throwing knives with multiple charges that would fire out additional enemy-seeking knives, both of which would ricochet damage when hitting crits. It's just absolute mayhem. And just as I had something going that I was really happy with, I then loot something that made me totally rethink my build. Like later, I found a legendary shotgun that vomits rainbows, dealing every status effect. So I changed my whole build to go all in on that, boosting the damage on my turrets whenever new statuses were applied, and that was a fun time too. Both those builds were just in one tree on one class. The number of options available to you is truly staggering, and in Borderlands 4, it kind of all matters, since enemies here are much more threatening than in previous games to compensate for your power gains. But with creativity and a dash of luck, you can still break the game in ways that very few looter shooters allow for. With the additions made to the gunplay and loot game in Borderlands 4, it really is just peak Borderlands, man. Like, to the point that I think it's one of the most fun shooters you can play right now. There are holes that you can poke in the story and the open world, sure, but one thing that is undeniable is that Borderlands has never felt this fun to play.
I won't sacrifice anyone else under my command.
So Borderlands 4, despite some shitty performance and UI, this game is awesome. But to cap off this review, I want to touch on one last factor that makes Borderlands 4 so alluring to me. As much as I've praised Borderlands 4 for its leaps forward, leaps that feel overdue given how much the looter genre has advanced since the franchise's inception, there's one thing I'm grateful hasn't changed about Borderlands over the years. The fact that it is not a live service. As tempting as it might have been for Gearbox to go that direction in 2025, given how ripe this franchise would be for seasonal resets, a cosmetic store, a battle pass, everything that basically all looters and ARPGs are doing these days, Gearbox haven't done that. For its single box price, you get a meaty 20 to 30 hour main story with well-written side quests, tons of replayability in its endgame loop, and a game that you can easily jump into with friends where the fun factor is immediate and your efforts will never be made redundant. And yet, you still get to reap the benefits of a live service. The Borderlands games have always had huge, dedicated communities to plug into, and with both free and paid updates down the line, bringing things like new locations, missions, weapons, and character classes, Borderlands 4 is only going to get bigger and better over time. For some, the performance and UI issues may very likely bog down the experience, so on that basis, I'd suggest you hold off if you're on anything other than a high-end machine. But speaking to my time with Borderlands 4, I've had a blast. I really have, and I fully intend on continuing to play long after this review. The visuals, story, exploration, combat, buildcraft, it's all the best Borderlands has ever been and represents an evolution for the franchise in all the right ways, such that this isn't just my favorite Borderlands game, but one of my favorite looters, period. And that is why I strongly recommend Borderlands 4.